Hi and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm very excited because I'm coming at you with a book haul. I have 10 books in total to show you and all but one are physical books. So that's very exciting, and I have a good variety of books. Some are new, some are old, some are even classics. Some I bought new, some I bought secondhand, and some books are in English, some are in French, and some are in Swedish. So there is good variety here, something for everyone, I think. So since I have 10 books to get through, let's get started. Okay, so let's start with the only book that I bought for my iPad, and that is Bridgerton 2, The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. So like everyone else, I have been watching Bridgerton. I watched the first season when it first came out, and I didn't really like it that much, so I never was interested enough to read the books that the series is based on. So when the second season now came out, I wasn't even sure I was going to watch it, but I was curious and I wanted to watch what everyone else was watching. So I did watch it, and I actually liked the second season a lot more than the first. I thought that the main couple was more interesting, I liked the actors better, and I thought that they had much better chemistry than the actors in the first season. So I got kind of curious and wanted to see how the books are, and I sort of never read romance otherwise, and I've said before that I want to read more books in genres that I usually don't read, so I thought this would be a great opportunity to read from a new genre for me, and all at the same time see how the Bridgerton books are and sort of compare them to the series. And I guess most people know what Bridgerton is about, but for those of you who don't know, it's a romance set in the Regency era in the UK, and it revolves around one family, and each of the siblings in this family has a dedicated book to them, and that book is about them and their romance, basically. So yeah, that's the first book and the only book that I don't have a physical copy of. So let's get into the pile of books that I have. So 2 weeks ago I traveled to Sweden, my home country, to visit friends and family in Gothenburg. And while I was there, I took the opportunity to go book shopping. And the first store that I went to was Myrorna, which is sort of like Goodwill in America. So they sell secondhand books that people have donated, and they sell them pretty cheaply. And in this store that I went to, they had a pretty large selection of books, both in English, Swedish, and even some in other languages. But despite the large selection, I didn't really find anything that tickled my fancy. So I left there empty-handed and went on to the next store. And the next store was Röde Orm, or Red Snake in English. And it is a second-hand bookstore. They only sell second-hand books. And here I really hit the jackpot. I have mentioned in a previous video that I have never read Stephen King or Joyce Carol Oates, but that I want to read them both. And here I found books by both of these authors. And so this is the Stephen King book that I found, and this is the Swedish edition. The original English title is The Dark Half, and this one was translated by Roland Adlerbert. I always forget to mention the translator, but this time I remembered. And I really wanted to find an older Stephen King book, something from the 80s or 90s, preferably a hardback with a cover that's a bit garish and outdated and unmodern. And this is exactly what I found here. This book is from 1989, so that's exactly the time period I was imagining. And this book is about a writer who writes under a pseudonym, and the pseudonym is George Stark, which is why the Swedish title is Stark. And so the writer decides to kill off the pseudonym, but the pseudonym doesn't want to remain dead. and I guess here is where the horror and mystery sort of starts unfolding. So I think that sounds very interesting. So the next book that I found in the same store is this one by Joyce Carol Oates. This is also the Swedish edition, and the original English title is My Sister, My Love, and this one was translated by Ulla Danielsson and is from 2008. So this book is about a 6-year-old girl who is found murdered, and her murder never gets solved and no one is convicted. So 10 years later, her older brother sort of starts looking for answers himself, and the very tragic family history is unraveled, I guess you would say. And as I understand it, this is a fictional book, but it is based on a real murder case in the US in, I think, 1996, where a beauty pageant girl is found dead and her murder was never resolved. So I think that sounds super interesting, and I'm very excited to finally read Joyce Carol Oates. So next I went to a small independent bookshop in Gothenburg that sells both new and secondhand books, and it is called Aniora. And Aniora, for those of you who don't know, is the name of a book-long science fiction poem written by Swedish author, also Nobel Prize winning author, Harry Martinson in the 1950s. So that's a sort of a classic Swedish piece of literature. And anyhow, I had never been to this bookstore before. I think it opened after I moved from Sweden, but it was a really, really lovely bookstore. They had new editions of classics, they had more obscure literature, and like I said, also secondhand books. And here I picked up The Great Gatsby, and this is a UK edition that I really, really like. I really like this cover, and I don't think I have to explain the plot in The Great Gatsby. I think most people know it or have seen one of the movies that's come out. But I'm really excited to read this one. I've heard so much about the book on BookTube that it's a great book to read, and it's from the 1920s. It's by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and it's considered a classic, I guess. So I'm very much looking forward to reading this one. So next I went to Akademibokhandeln, which is a large bookstore chain in Sweden, sort of like Waterstones in the UK or Barnes & Noble in the US. And here I found many books that I wanted to buy, but I had limited space in my luggage, so I could only buy one, and I chose to buy The Hobbit because I had been looking for this in France, but it was sold out pretty much everywhere. So I was very happy when I found it in Sweden, and I'm reading the English original version from 1937. I never realized that this book was that old, but it is, and I have never really read fantasy before, so I think that starting with The Hobbit is a good choice, because I'm not used to the whole universe building and that kind of stuff. So since I've seen the Hobbit movies once and the Lord of the Rings movies many times, I know the universe, so I think it's easier to start reading something that you're familiar with. And if I like The Hobbit, then I want to read the Lord of the Rings series as well, because I haven't read them. I've only seen the movies many times because I really like them. The Hobbit movies I liked less, that's why I've only seen them once. So I don't have a great memory of exactly what happens. I remember glimpses and scenes, but I don't remember the whole story. So I think reading it will be a great like foray into fantasy. So those are all the books that I bought in Sweden. Like I said, I would have liked to have bought more books, but I had limited space in my luggage. So now we are going to books that I have bought here in France. So a few weeks before I went to Sweden, I went book shopping here in Nice, which I mentioned in one of my weekend vlogs. And the first bookstore that I went to was La Sorbonne, and there I picked up this book, On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and I picked up the original English version. And this book is, I think, considered a modern classic. It was written in 1956 and is sort of a blend of fiction and autobiography, and is about the young generation in the US in the 1950s. And I want to read you the back because it really pulls you in, I think. So Sal Paradise, young and innocent, joins the slightly crazed Dean Moriarty on a breathless, exuberant ride back and forth across the United States. Their hedonistic search for release or fulfillment through drink, sex, drugs, and jazz becomes an exploration of personal freedom, a test of the limits of the American dream. So that sounds very, very interesting to me, so I can't wait to read this one. So I picked up a second book at La Sorbonne, and that is this one, which is a collection put together by Luc Fraise, and it is called Marcel Post, Le Mystérieux Correspondant. And this is the French original, published in 2019, I believe. I have tried to look for an English translation, but I couldn't find one. So this book is only for you French speakers at the moment. Marcel Post is mainly famous for his 7-volume masterpiece called In Search of Lost Time. But before he published that, he also wrote other stories, and some of them are novellas revolving around sexuality and specifically homosexuality. And those were very controversial topics at the time in the early 1900s. And so it's thought that maybe that's the reason why they were never published back then. But they have since been found and are now published in this book. And like I said, this book also contains notes and sketches, and as I understand it, it's notes and sketches from Proust's process of writing In Search of Lost Time. And at the moment I am reading the second volume of In Search of Lost Time. I have read the first one already, and I absolutely love it. It's such a great read. I never thought I would like something published in the 1920s to be so good. So after I finish reading In Search of Lost Time, I think I will reread it in French and sort of read it along with this book, because there are notes about In Search of Lost Time in here. So I think it will be fun to read In Search of Lost Time and follow along like with his notes, with his own notes in this book. So yeah, I don't think I will read this anytime soon, but when I do read it, I think it will be very enlightening and educational and fun. So the next bookshop I went to here in Nice is Librairie Matas, and I picked up this book here, which is a Spanish book, but I have the French translation. And the author is called Enriquevila Matas. Maybe my Spanish is not that good, but you can see it here. And this one is translated to French by André Gabastou, and this one was published in 2017. When I saw this book at the bookshop, I had never heard about it before or since. But I saw it at La Sorbonne first, and the cover really grabbed me, and I read the back and it sounded interesting to me, but you can't buy all the books that interest you, so I put it down and moved on. And then when I got to the second bookshop, Librairie Matas, I saw it again because the cover is so striking, and I read the cover, the back again, and it just sounded too interesting not to bring home with me. So yeah, I ended up buying it in the end. And this book is about a man who is the neighbor of a writer, and he is very obsessed with this writer. And one day he hears the writer mention his first work, which he is not happy about, and I believe it's unpublished. So this man sort of takes over this unpublished work and starts rewriting it himself, and sort of fiction and reality becomes intertwined. No, I think that sounds super interesting and different from what I read before, so I'm very much looking forward to reading this book. So some time ago I was at the library here in Nice returning a book that I had borrowed, and at the exit in the library they have a table of books that they no longer want, and you can take one for free if you want to. So I had a look at that table, and this one grabbed my attention. It's called Money Shot, and it's by Christina Faust, and this is the original. It's not translated, it's written in English, and it's from 2008. When I grabbed it, I thought it was like older, like from the 90s or something. I thought it was like such a weird, striking cover that, oh, this can't be a modern book, it must be like older, but no, it's from 2008, which isn't that long ago. But anyhow, it's about, it's like a crime novel, but the main character is a porn star who's almost murdered, and then she tries to find out what happened and who tried to murder her. So that's something I have never read before. I don't think many people have read before, so it's going to be fun to read something so different, and it's very short, as you can see, so I think it will be a fun, short, weird read. So last but not least is another Stephen King book that I found yesterday at the grocery store, and it's The Outsider, and this is a newer Stephen King book. It's from 2018, and this is the French version translated by Sean Esch, and I'm very excited to read this one. I have seen it before in bookshops, but I haven't picked it up until now. And as I understand it, it's a crime novel. So a 12-year-old boy is found murdered, and the police finds DNA and fingerprints belonging to a respected man in the community. He's a teacher, he's the coach of the baseball team, and he's married and has kids, and he claims that he's innocent, and I guess the book is about whether he's innocent or not. So that sounds very interesting. So that is it for my book haul today, and I want to say thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.